When I found those documents hidden in my deceased father's office, my entire world shattered. 26 years of believing I was the family disappointment, the one who could never measure up to my golden siblings. But these papers revealed something far more sinister. My family had not just emotionally manipulated me, they had stolen my inheritance, forged documents, and systematically destroyed my financial future, while painting me as the worthless one. Everything I believed about myself was a carefully constructed lie. Before we dive into this shocking family revenge story, I want to know, where are you watching from? If you are ready to discover how karma finally caught up with my manipulative family, smash that like button and subscribe, because this tale of justice will leave you speechless. Trust me, you will want to see how this unfolds. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and for 26 years I lived as the black sheep of my family. My parents, Robert and Linda Rodriguez, along with my older siblings, Marcus and Isabella, had perfected the art of making me feel worthless. Every family dinner became a performance where they would highlight my failures while celebrating my siblings' successes. Marcus, the eldest at 32, had supposedly built a thriving real estate empire from scratch. Isabella, 29, was the family princess who had married well and lived in a mansion across town. Meanwhile, I struggled through community college, worked 2 part-time jobs, and lived in a cramped studio apartment that I could barely afford. Maya, when are you going to get your life together? My mother would ask during our monthly family gatherings, her voice dripping with disappointment. Look at your brother, he owns 3 properties now, and Isabella just bought a new luxury car. What have you accomplished? These conversations always ended the same way. My father would shake his head sadly and say, "You are nothing without this family, Maya. We are the only ones who will ever care about you." My siblings would nod in agreement, sometimes adding their own cutting remarks about my lack of ambition or success. For years, I accepted their narrative. I believed I was the failure, the disappointment, the one who could not live up to the Rodriguez family standards. I worked harder, trying desperately to prove myself worthy of their love and respect. But nothing I did was ever enough. Everything changed 3 months ago, when my father suffered a massive heart attack and died suddenly at 68. The funeral was a grand affair filled with business associates and family friends who spoke glowingly of Robert Rodriguez's success and generosity. I sat in the back row, feeling invisible as usual, while Marcus and Isabella received condolences and praise for being such accomplished children. 2 weeks after the funeral, my mother announced that the family would be gathering to discuss my father's estate and the future of his construction business, Rodriguez and Sons Construction. I assumed this was merely a formality. After all, I had never been involved in the family business, and my father had made it clear throughout his life that I was not worthy of such responsibility. The meeting took place in my father's home office, a room I had rarely been allowed to enter as a child. Marcus sat behind the massive oak desk, already acting like the new head of the family. Isabella perched elegantly in one of the leather chairs, while I was relegated to a small wooden chair near the door. "Maya," Marcus began, his tone patronizing, "we want you to know that Dad left you something in his will. It is not much, but he wanted to make sure you were taken care of." He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note that read, "For Maya, this should help you get back on your feet. Use it wisely. Love, Dad." $5,000. After a lifetime of being part of this family, my inheritance was $5,000, while my siblings discussed dividing millions of dollars in assets, properties, and business holdings. This is generous, considering... Isabella's voice trailed off meaningfully. "Considering what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus and Isabella exchanged glances. "Well, Maya, you have never contributed to the family business. You have never shown any interest in building something meaningful. This money will give you a fresh start somewhere else." The message was clear: take the money and disappear from their lives. I left that meeting feeling more worthless than ever, clutching the check and wondering how I would survive on $5,000. But something nagged at me, a memory from childhood of my father working late into the night, often mentioning projects and investments that involved all of his children, including me. That evening, I returned to my father's house while my mother was visiting Isabella. I told myself I just wanted one last look at his office, one final connection to the man who had shaped my entire sense of self-worth. The house felt different without his presence, hollow and cold. I wandered into his office and sat in his chair, surrounded by the leather-bound books and family photos that had always intimidated me. That is when I noticed something odd, a loose floorboard beneath the desk that creaked when I shifted my weight. Curiosity overcame my usual timidity. I knelt down and discovered that the board could be lifted, revealing a hidden compartment filled with documents, files, and a small metal box. My hands trembled as I pulled out the papers, not sure what I was looking for, but driven by an instinct I could not ignore. The first document I opened was a copy of my father's original will dated just 6 months before his death. My heart stopped as I read the contents. According to this version, I was named as an equal beneficiary, with my siblings entitled to 1/3 of all assets, including properties, investments, and business holdings worth over $3 million. But that was just the beginning. As I dug deeper through the hidden files, I discovered a systematic pattern of fraud and embezzlement that had been orchestrated by Marcus and Isabella with my mother's knowledge. They had been siphoning money from my trust fund. Yes, I had a trust fund for over 8 years, using forged documents and falsified records to make it appear as if I had never been entitled to any family wealth. Bank statements showed regular transfers from accounts bearing my name to accounts controlled by my siblings. Investment portfolios that should have been building my future had been liquidated and redistributed. Properties that my father had purchased specifically for my future had been quietly transferred to Marcus's real estate holdings. The most damning evidence was a series of emails between my siblings discussing their plan to keep Maya in the dark and maintain her dependency so that she would never question her position in the family or investigate her true inheritance. One email from Isabella to Marcus read, "As long as we keep her feeling worthless and grateful for scraps, she will never think to look deeper. Dad's guilt about cutting her out of the business makes him soft, but we can manage that. The money from her trust fund will set us up for life." Marcus had replied, "Agreed. The construction company contracts are perfect for laundering the transfers. By the time anyone notices, we will be established enough that it will not matter. Maya will never amount to anything anyway. We are just accelerating the inevitable." I sat on that office floor for hours, reading document after document that revealed the depth of their betrayal. They had not just stolen my money, they had stolen my entire sense of self. Every family dinner where they had made me feel inadequate had been a performance designed to keep me from questioning why I struggled financially while they thrived. The cruelest part was discovering that my father had actually been proud of me. In his private notes, I found records of him tracking my progress through college, my work accomplishments, even my small apartment that he had secretly helped me secure by providing references and financial backing that I never knew about. He had been planning to bring me into the business officially and had been saving money specifically for my future. But my siblings had convinced him that I was not ready, that I needed more time to mature, that bringing me in too soon would be harmful to my development. They had manipulated his protective instincts and turned them into weapons against me. As dawn broke through the office windows, I carefully photographed every document, every email, every piece of evidence that proved their crimes. I also discovered the key to a safety deposit box that contained even more documentation of their financial manipulation. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something other than shame and inadequacy. I felt rage, pure cleansing rage at the people who had stolen not just my money, but my entire identity. They had made me believe I was nothing while they built their lives on my stolen inheritance. But rage alone was not enough. I needed a plan, and I needed allies. Because if there was one thing my family had taught me, it was that you do not survive a Rodriguez battle without strategy. The war was about to begin, and this time I held all the weapons. The next morning, I called in sick to my retail job at the department store where I had been working for 3 years. My manager, Mrs. Patterson, had always been understanding about my family obligations, but she seemed surprised when I requested a week of bereavement leave. "Of course, Maya," she said gently. "Take all the time you need. Family comes first." If only she knew how true that statement was about to become. My first stop was the safety deposit box at First National Bank. Using the key I had found in my father's hidden compartment, I discovered even more devastating evidence. Complete financial records dating back to when I turned 18 showed systematic theft of nearly $400,000 from accounts that should have been building my future. But the most shocking discovery was a letter addressed to me, sealed and dated just 2 weeks before my father's death. With shaking hands, I opened it and read, "My dearest Maya, if you are reading this, then something has happened to me, and I pray you have found the truth. I was too cowardly to tell you while I lived. Your siblings have been stealing from you for years, and I allowed it because I believed their lies about protecting you. I thought keeping you innocent would keep you safe, but I see now that I have failed you as a father. You were always the strongest of my children, the most honest, the most deserving of everything I built. I am sorry I let them convince me otherwise. Use this evidence to take back what is yours. You are not nothing without us. We are nothing without you. Love always, Dad." I sat in that tiny bank room and cried for 20 minutes. Tears of grief for the father I had lost, tears of rage at the siblings who had betrayed me, and tears of something I had not felt in years, hope. Armed with irrefutable proof, I knew my next move had to be strategic. Going directly to my family would give them time to cover their tracks or destroy additional evidence. Instead, I decided to consult with an attorney who specialized in estate fraud and family financial crimes. Margaret Walsh had been recommended by a legal aid website, and her reviews specifically mentioned her expertise in cases involving family betrayal and financial manipulation. Her office was in downtown Portland, a sleek space that intimidated me at first, but Margaret herself was surprisingly warm and direct. "Maya," she said, after reviewing the documents I had brought, "this is one of the most comprehensive cases of family financial abuse I have seen in 20 years of practice. The paper trail your father left behind is extraordinary. They documented their own crimes in detail." She explained that the evidence showed clear violations of multiple laws: embezzlement, forgery, identity theft, and fiduciary abuse. "The question is not whether you have a case, the question is how far you want to take this. Criminal charges could result in serious jail time for your siblings." I thought about all those family dinners, all those moments when they had made me feel worthless and grateful for their scraps of attention. "I want to take it as far as the law allows," I said firmly. Margaret smiled. "Then let us build an ironclad case. But Maya, you need to understand, this will destroy your family relationships permanently. There will be no going back after we file these charges." "They destroyed our family relationships years ago," I replied. "I am just making it official." Our strategy was methodical and devastating. First, Margaret filed a restraining order to freeze all assets related to my father's estate, preventing any further transfers or sales. This would stop Marcus and Isabella from moving money or properties while we built our case. Second, we contacted the IRS and state tax authorities to report the unreported income transfers and potential tax evasion related to the stolen funds. Financial crimes always caught the attention of federal investigators. Third, we prepared a comprehensive civil lawsuit that would not only recover my stolen inheritance, but also seek punitive damages for the emotional and financial harm caused by their systematic fraud. But the most satisfying part of our plan was the element of surprise. We scheduled a family meeting for the following Saturday, telling my mother, Marcus, and Isabella that I had some questions about my father's estate and wanted to discuss my future with the family. They agreed immediately, probably expecting another opportunity to patronize me and reinforce my position as the family failure. Marcus even joked during our phone call that he hoped I had not spent my inheritance already. The meeting was set for 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon at my mother's house. Margaret would be there as my financial advisor to help me understand some complex documents. My family had no idea they were walking into a legal ambush. That Friday evening, I did something I had never done before. I bought myself an expensive outfit. Not because I needed to impress them, but because I wanted to feel powerful when I watched their world crumble. The navy blue blazer and matching pants cost more than I usually spent on clothes in 6 months, but it was an investment in my psychological warfare. Saturday morning, I woke up feeling calm for the first time in months. The anxiety that had plagued me my entire adult life was gone, replaced by a cold determination that surprised me. I looked in the mirror and saw something I had never seen before, someone who knew her own worth. Margaret met me at a coffee shop near my mother's house to review our strategy one final time. "Remember," she said, "let me do most of the talking once we reveal the evidence. They will likely try to gaslight you or make you doubt yourself. That is their standard operating procedure with you." We arrived at my mother's house precisely at 2 o'clock. The familiar colonial-style home where I had grown up suddenly felt foreign to me, as if I was seeing it clearly for the first time. Marcus's expensive BMW and Isabella's luxury SUV were parked in the driveway, symbols of the success they had built on my stolen money. My mother greeted us at the door, looking surprised to see Margaret but maintaining her usual polite facade. "Maya, dear, I did not realize you were bringing someone." "This is Margaret Walsh, my financial advisor," I said smoothly. I wanted professional help understanding some complex family financial matters. Marcus and Isabella were waiting in the living room, both dressed casually but expensively. Marcus looked confident and slightly bored, while Isabella seemed mildly curious about why I needed a financial advisor for a $5,000 inheritance. "So, Maya," Marcus began, settling into his usual position of authority, "what questions did you have about Dad's estate? I thought we covered everything pretty clearly last week." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of documents. "Actually, I discovered some discrepancies that I was hoping you could help me understand." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Isabella shifted uncomfortably while Marcus's confident expression wavered slightly. "What kind of discrepancies?" my mother asked, her voice sharp. Margaret stepped forward smoothly. "Perhaps I should explain. Maya, may I show them the documents we discussed?" I nodded, and Margaret began laying out copies of the bank statements, investment records, and email communications on the coffee table. The color drained from my siblings' faces as they recognized their own financial crimes spread out in black and white. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, but his voice had lost its usual authority. "These are records of systematic embezzlement and fraud perpetrated against my client over the past 8 years, Margaret said calmly. "We have documentation of over $400,000 stolen from Maya's trust funds and investment accounts, along with evidence of forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud." Isabella stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Maya, you cannot seriously believe—" "I believe the evidence," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I believe the emails where you two discussed keeping me in the dark and maintaining my dependency. I believe the bank records showing regular transfers from my accounts to yours. I believe my father's letter explaining how you manipulated him into allowing this abuse." Marcus tried one last desperate gambit. "Maya, you are making a terrible mistake. We are your family. We were protecting you." "Stop," I said firmly. "You were stealing from me while convincing me I was worthless. You built your entire adult lives on money that belonged to me, then made me feel grateful for scraps." Margaret distributed formal legal documents to each of them. "These are notices of criminal charges being filed with the district attorney's office, as well as notification of a civil lawsuit seeking full recovery of stolen assets plus punitive damages. As of this afternoon, all assets related to Robert Rodriguez's estate are frozen pending investigation." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother sat down heavily, her face pale and shocked. Marcus stared at the legal papers as if they might disappear. Isabella began crying, but these were not tears of remorse, they were tears of panic and rage. "You ungrateful little," Isabella started, but Margaret cut her off. "I would advise against making any threatening or defamatory statements. Everything said here today may be used in court proceedings." Marcus finally found his voice. "Maya, you are destroying this family over money. Is that what Dad would have wanted?" I stood up, and for the first time in my life, I looked down at my older brother, not because he was sitting and I was standing, but because I finally understood who was truly worthless in this family. "Dad left me a letter," I said quietly. "He said I was always the strongest of his children, the most honest, the most deserving. He said you are nothing without me, not the other way around." And you know what? He was right. Margaret began packing up her materials. "Maya, we should go. The authorities will be in touch with everyone here within the next few days to schedule formal interviews." As we walked toward the door, my mother's voice stopped us. "Maya, please, can we not work this out as a family?" I turned back one last time to look at the people who had shaped my entire understanding of myself through lies and manipulation. "You stopped being my family the day you decided I was worth less than your greed," I said. "Now you get to face the consequences." The last thing I heard as we left the house was Isabella screaming at Marcus about how this was all his fault for keeping such detailed records of their crimes. Even in crisis, they were turning on each other. Standing on the front porch of my childhood home, I felt something I had never experienced before, the satisfaction of truth finally being revealed. But I also knew this was just the beginning. My siblings would not go down without a fight, and I needed to prepare for the war that was about to unfold. The week following our devastating family meeting passed in a whirlwind of legal activity and emotional turbulence. Margaret had warned me that my siblings would likely attempt damage control, but I was not prepared for the intensity of their counterattack. It started Monday morning with a series of increasingly frantic phone calls from my mother. I let them go to voicemail, and her messages evolved from pleading to angry to desperate over the course of 3 hours. "Maya, please call me back. We need to talk about this misunderstanding before it goes too far." Then, "Maya, this is your mother. You are making a terrible mistake that will hurt everyone in this family." Finally, "Maya Rodriguez, you call me back right now. You are being manipulated by that lawyer, and you are going to destroy everything your father worked for." Tuesday brought a surprise visit from Isabella at my apartment. I watched through this peephole as she stood in the hallway for 20 minutes, alternating between knocking and calling my name. She had never visited my apartment before. I wondered if she was shocked by how small and modest it was compared to the mansion she lived in with money stolen from me. Wednesday's mail included a letter from Marcus that was both a masterpiece of manipulation and a confession of guilt. He wrote about how hurt he was by my betrayal of family trust, and how my father would be devastated to see me tearing apart his legacy. But buried in his emotional manipulation were admissions that he had made mistakes in handling family finances and had perhaps been overly protective of my inheritance. Margaret read the letter with professional amusement. "He is trying to reframe embezzlement as overprotectiveness," she noted. "This letter will be useful evidence of his awareness of wrongdoing." But the real escalation came Thursday evening when I received a call from my employer, Mrs. Patterson. Her voice was strained and uncomfortable. "Maya, I hate to make this call, but I received some disturbing information about your family situation today. A man claiming to be your brother contacted me and suggested that you might be having some kind of mental health crisis. He said you were making false accusations against your family and that your behavior had become erratic and potentially dangerous." My blood ran cold. Marcus was trying to sabotage my job, my reputation, my credibility. This was exactly the kind of psychological warfare that had kept me down for years. "Mrs. Patterson," I said carefully, "I am involved in a legal matter concerning my father's estate. My brother is facing criminal charges for financial fraud, and he is trying to discredit me to protect himself. I can provide you with contact information for my attorney if you need verification." There was a pause. "Maya, in the 3 years you have worked here, You have been nothing but honest and reliable. I am not going to take action based on a phone call from someone I do not know, but I wanted you to be aware that he tried. This conversation was a turning point for me. I realized that my siblings were not just going to accept the legal consequences of their actions, they were going to try to destroy my life in every possible way. If I was going to survive this war, I needed allies, and I needed them fast. My first strategic decision was to contact my father's longtime business partner and closest friend, David Morrison. My father had often mentioned David during family dinners, describing him as the most honest man in the construction business and someone who had been like a brother to him for over 20 years. David agreed to meet with me at a small diner downtown, away from any places where my family might see us together. He was a tall, weathered man in his early 60s with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke to decades of honest work. "Maya," he said as soon as we sat down, "I have been hoping you would contact me. Your father talked about you constantly in his final months. He was so proud of how hard you worked, how you never asked for help even when you were struggling. He said you had more integrity in your little finger than most people had in their whole body." This was revelatory. My father had been proud of me, but I had never known because my siblings had controlled all family narratives. David continued, "I also know about the financial irregularities in your father's accounts. Robert came to me about 6 months before he died, concerned about some discrepancies he had discovered. He suspected Marcus was moving money around inappropriately, but he did not have proof yet." "Did you know about the extent of their theft?" I asked. David shook his head grimly. "I knew something was wrong, but I had no idea how deep it went. Robert was planning to investigate further, but then he had the heart attack." He paused, studying my face. "Maya, your father left something with me for you. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you got it." From his briefcase, David pulled out an envelope marked for Maya, in case of emergency. Inside was a letter from my father and a key to another safety deposit box at a different bank. The letter was brief, but devastating. "Maya, if David is giving you this, then I am gone and you have discovered the truth about your siblings. The safety deposit box contains evidence I gathered about their activities, including recorded conversations and additional financial documents. I also transferred $200,000 into a private account under your name, a loan money they cannot touch. Use it to protect yourself and fight for what is right. I am sorry I was not brave enough to do this while I lived." I sat in that diner booth and cried while David held my hand like the father figure I had always needed. When I finally composed myself, he made an offer that changed everything. "Maya, I want to help you fight this. Your father and I built our construction company on honesty and hard work. What your siblings did is not just a crime against you, it is a betrayal of everything your father stood for. I will testify on your behalf, provide business records, whatever you need." But David's support was just the beginning of my alliance building. That weekend, I reached out to my father's accountant, Patricia Ellis, who had been handling the family's taxes for 15 years. Margaret had advised me to contact her as a potential witness, but I was not prepared for what Patricia revealed. "Maya, I have been waiting for someone to ask the right questions," Patricia said when I called her. "I flagged unusual activity in your family's accounts multiple times over the past few years, but Marcus always had explanations that seemed plausible. Now I realize I was seeing evidence of systematic theft." Patricia had copies of tax documents that showed Marcus and Isabella reporting income that had actually been transferred from my trust funds. She also had records of investment losses that were fabricated to hide the stolen money. "I should have pushed harder when things did not add up," Patricia admitted. "I feel responsible for not protecting you." My next ally came from an unexpected source. While researching my legal options online, I discovered a support group for victims of family financial abuse. The group met weekly at a community center downtown, and I decided to attend their Thursday evening meeting. The facilitator was Dr. Jennifer Kumar, a therapist who specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. The group consisted of 8 people ranging in age from their 20s to their 70s, all dealing with similar betrayals by family members. Financial abuse within families is more common than most people realize, Dr. Kumar explained during my first meeting. The psychological impact often exceeds the financial damage because it destroys trust in the people who are supposed to love and protect us unconditionally. Listening to other people's stories was both heartbreaking and empowering. Maria, a woman in her 50s, had discovered that her siblings had been forging her signature on property deeds for decades. James, a young man about my age, had learned that his parents had taken out credit cards in his name and destroyed his credit rating before he even turned 18. But the most valuable connection I made was with Rebecca Washington, a retired accountant who had successfully prosecuted her own siblings for embezzlement 5 years earlier. Rebecca became my informal mentor, teaching me about the emotional challenges of fighting family members in court. The hardest part is not the legal battle, Rebecca warned me. It is dealing with the people who will tell you that family should forgive family, that money is not worth destroying relationships, that you should just let it go. You need to prepare yourself for the isolation that comes with demanding justice from your own blood. Rebecca also introduced me to her attorney Michael Torres, who had handled her case and specialized in complex family financial crimes. While Margaret Walsh was excellent for the civil aspects of my case, Michael had specific experience with the criminal prosecution side. Michael said during our consultation, "Your case is stronger than most I see. The paper trail your siblings left is extraordinary. But you should know that criminal prosecution of family financial abuse cases can take years to resolve, and the emotional toll is significant." By the end of my second week of alliance building, I had assembled a formidable team: Margaret Walsh for civil litigation, Michael Torres for criminal prosecution support, David Morrison as a key witness and character reference, Patricia Ellis as a financial expert witness, and Rebecca Washington as an experienced guide through the family court battlefield. But my siblings were not sitting idle. Through Patricia Ellis, I learned that Marcus had contacted several of my father's business associates, spreading rumors about my mental health and claiming that I was being manipulated by ambulance-chasing lawyers who were filling my head with false accusations. Isabella had taken a different approach, reaching out to extended family members and family friends to paint herself as the victim of my greed and vindictiveness. She told anyone who would listen that I had always been jealous of her success and was now using our father's death as an opportunity to destroy the family. The psychological pressure was intense. I received calls from aunts and cousins I had not spoken to in years, all urging me to work things out privately and stop airing family business in public. Some were genuinely concerned about family unity, but others had clearly been influenced by Marcus and Isabella's damage control campaign. The breaking point came 3 weeks after our initial confrontation. I arrived home from work to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart pounding, I called the police before entering. Nothing had been stolen, but someone had clearly been through my belongings searching for something specific. The police officer who responded was sympathetic but realistic. "Without evidence of forced entry or theft, this is hard to prosecute," he explained. "But given your family situation, I recommend changing your locks and installing a security system." That evening, Margaret called with alarming news. "Maya, I received a call from an attorney representing your brother. He is claiming that you stole documents from your father's office and that your evidence was obtained illegally. He is also threatening to sue you for defamation based on the criminal charges we filed." I felt a familiar wave of anxiety wash over me, the same feeling that had dominated my life whenever my family disapproved of me. But this time, instead of backing down, I called David Morrison. "David, they are trying to intimidate me into dropping the charges. They broke into my apartment, they are spreading lies about my mental health, and now they are threatening to sue me for exposing their crimes." David's response was immediate and fierce. "Maya, your father faced similar tactics when he first started his business. Competitors tried to destroy him through rumors and intimidation. But he always said the same thing: the truth does not need to hide in the shadows. If your siblings are this desperate to stop you, it means they know you have them beat." That night, I made a decision that would define the rest of this battle. Instead of hiding from their attacks, I was going to expose them publicly. If they wanted to destroy my reputation, I would make sure everyone knew exactly why they were so desperate to discredit me. The war was escalating, but I had built an army of allies who believed in justice. My siblings had underestimated me for the last time. My decision to go public with my family's crimes began with a carefully crafted social media post. I had never been active on social platforms, but Rebecca Washington convinced me that controlling my own narrative was essential when facing a family smear campaign. The post was simple, but powerful. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who raised you to believe you deserve it. After 26 years of being told I was nothing without my family, I discovered they had stolen over $400,000 from my inheritance while making me feel grateful for scraps. Truth has a way of surfacing eventually. Within hours, the post had dozens of comments from friends, coworkers, and acquaintances expressing shock and support. Many shared their own stories of family financial abuse or emotional manipulation. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly seen and believed. But my siblings' response was swift and vicious. Marcus created his own social media post that painted me as a disturbed individual who was making false accusations against grieving family members, and suggested that I was being manipulated by predatory lawyers seeking a quick payday. Isabella took a more personal approach, reaching out to my friends and coworkers individually with detailed stories about my supposed mental health issues and history of making false accusations when I did not get my way. She was convincing because she mixed lies with just enough truth to make her stories believable. The most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Patricia Ellis, my father's accountant, who had been providing crucial evidence for my case, called Margaret with disturbing news. "I need to withdraw from this case," Patricia said during our emergency conference call. "I have been contacted by Marcus Rodriguez's attorney, and they have threatened to report me to the state licensing board for violations of client confidentiality. They claim that providing Maya with tax documents without proper authorization could cost me my license." Margaret tried to reason with her. "Patricia, you have legal protection as a whistleblower in financial fraud cases. We can fight any licensing challenges." But Patricia's voice was shaky with fear. "I cannot risk my career. I am 58 years old, and I cannot start over if I lose my license. I am sorry, Maya. I believe you, but I cannot help you anymore." The loss of Patricia as a witness was devastating, but it was not the worst betrayal that week. 3 days later, I discovered that David Morrison, my father's business partner, and the man I had come to see as a surrogate father figure, had been secretly meeting with Marcus. I learned about this betrayal through Dr. Kumar's support group. James, the young man whose parents had destroyed his credit, worked at a restaurant downtown and had seen David and Marcus having an intense conversation over lunch. "I recognized your brother from the photos you showed us," James explained. "They were at a corner table, and your brother was showing the older man some kind of documents. The older guy looked really upset, like he was being pressured into something." My heart sank as I realized what was happening. I called David immediately, but his response confirmed my worst fears. "Maya, I need to tell you something," David said, his voice heavy with guilt. "Marcus came to see me with some information that changes things. He showed me financial records that suggest your father was involved in some questionable business practices. If this case goes to trial, those records could be made public, and it would destroy your father's reputation permanently." I felt the familiar sensation of my world tilting off its axis. "David, what kind of records? Falsified permit applications, bribes to city officials, tax evasion going back 15 years, David said quietly. "Marcus says he was trying to protect your father's legacy by keeping these things hidden, but that if you continue with this prosecution, he will have no choice but to reveal everything to defend himself." The manipulation was masterful. Marcus had found David's weakness, his loyalty to my father's memory, and was using it to turn him against me. But I also realized that Marcus was revealing his desperation. He was willing to destroy our father's reputation to protect himself. David, I said carefully, did Marcus provide any proof that these documents were genuine? There was a long pause. He said he would show me originals if I agreed to stop supporting your case. So you have only seen copies from the same man who forged documents to steal my inheritance. Another pause longer this time. Maya, I do not know what to believe anymore. All I know is that if these allegations about your father become public, it will destroy the reputation we spent 20 years building. David's withdrawal of support came at the worst possible time. Margaret had been counting on his testimony to establish my father's character and his trust in me. Without David, our case was significantly weaker. But the betrayals were not finished. 2 days after David's defection, I received a call that shattered what little confidence I had left. Maya, this is Michael Torres, the criminal prosecution attorney said. I have some difficult news. The district attorney's office has decided not to pursue criminal charges against your siblings at this time. They feel the evidence is too ambiguous and that this appears to be a civil family dispute rather than clear criminal activity. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. But we have bank records, emails, documentation of systematic theft. We do, Michael agreed, but your brother's attorney has provided alternative explanations for every piece of evidence. They are claiming that all financial transfers were made with your father's knowledge and consent as part of family business operations. Without your father here to contradict their claims, and without Patricia Ellis's testimony about irregular accounting practices, the DA does not feel confident about securing convictions. The criminal case that had been the centerpiece of my justice strategy was dead. Marcus and Isabella would face no jail time, no criminal consequences for their systematic theft and emotional abuse. That evening, I sat in my small apartment, feeling more defeated than I had ever felt in my life. My allies had either abandoned me or been neutralized by my siblings' counterattacks. The criminal case was gone, and the civil case suddenly seemed much less certain. Rebecca Washington found me there 3 hours later, having come to check on me when I missed our support group meeting. She took one look at my face and understood everything. They got to your witnesses, she said simply. I nodded, unable to speak without crying. Rebecca sat down beside me and took my hand. Maya, this is exactly what happened to me during my own case. My siblings convinced half our witnesses to change their stories, and they nearly broke me. But you know what I learned? I looked at her through my tears. The truth does not need witnesses to be true. It just needs someone brave enough to keep fighting for it, even when everyone else gives up. But bravery felt impossible when I was facing this battle alone again, just like I had faced everything else in my life. My siblings had systematically destroyed my support network just like they had systematically destroyed my sense of self-worth for 26 years. The difference was that this time I knew they were lying. The question was whether knowing the truth would be enough to save me when everything else was falling apart. The morning after my support network collapsed, I woke up with a clarity that surprised me. The defeat of the previous weeks had stripped away my illusions about easy justice, but it had also revealed something important. My siblings' desperate tactics proved that I was closer to victory than I had realized. Their willingness to threaten Patricia Ellis's career, manipulate David Morrison through false documents, and potentially destroy our father's reputation showed that they were cornered animals fighting for survival. People who are truly innocent do not resort to such extreme measures. I called Margaret Walsh with a new determination. I want to hire a private investigator, I announced. If my siblings are willing to forge documents to defend themselves, they have probably made other mistakes we have not discovered yet. Margaret was cautiously optimistic. That could be expensive, Maya, and there is no guarantee we will find anything useful. I have the $200,000 my father left me, I replied. If I do not use it to fight for justice, what was the point of him saving it for me? Margaret recommended Sarah Chen, a former FBI financial crimes investigator who now worked as a private consultant. Sarah's rates were steep, but her reputation for uncovering hidden assets and financial crimes was legendary. Our first meeting took place in Sarah's downtown office, a modest space filled with computers, filing cabinets, and whiteboards covered in complex financial diagrams. Sarah herself was a petite woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and an intensity that reminded me of a hunting bird of prey. Maya, Sarah said after reviewing my case files, your siblings made a classic mistake. They kept detailed records of their crimes because they never thought anyone would be smart enough or brave enough to challenge them. But there are gaps in their documentation that suggest they were even more careless than we initially thought. Sarah's investigation strategy was methodical and comprehensive. She started by analyzing every financial transaction my siblings had made over the past 8 years, looking for patterns and irregularities that might reveal additional crimes. Within 48 hours, Sarah had discovered something extraordinary. Marcus's real estate empire was built almost entirely on laundered money from my trust fund, but he had been reporting false property values to both lenders and insurance companies to maximize his profits. This is securities fraud and insurance fraud on top of the embezzlement, Sarah explained, showing me complex charts that tracked money flow from my accounts through multiple shell companies before ending up as down payments on Marcus's properties. The paper trail is so clear that even without criminal prosecution, these financial institutions will have to investigate. But Sarah's most devastating discovery came from analyzing Isabella's spending patterns. My sister had been living far beyond even her husband's substantial income, funding her luxury lifestyle entirely through stolen money from my inheritance. More importantly, she had been lying to her own husband about the source of their wealth. Isabella's husband Thomas is a successful attorney, but his income alone could never support their lifestyle, Sarah explained. She has been telling him that she inherited money from a distant relative, but we can trace every dollar back to your stolen funds. Thomas has no idea his wife is a thief. This revelation gave us a powerful new strategy. Instead of trying to convince more witnesses to testify, we could let Isabella's crimes expose themselves by contacting the people who had been unknowingly benefiting from stolen money. Sarah's next discovery was even more shocking. While investigating Marcus's business dealings, she uncovered evidence that my siblings had been planning their theft for much longer than we originally thought. Look at this, Sarah said, showing me emails dating back almost 10 years. They started discussing how to manage Maya's expectations and protect family assets when you were still in high school. This was not opportunistic theft. It was a decade-long conspiracy to deny you your rightful inheritance. The emails revealed a chilling level of premeditation and manipulation. Marcus and Isabella had discussed strategies for keeping me financially dependent, emotionally insecure, and grateful for their minimal support. They had planned every aspect of my psychological imprisonment while systematically looting my future. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. While tracing Marcus's business transactions, Sarah discovered that he had been embezzling money not just from my trust fund, but also from his own real estate clients. Marcus has been using money from client escrow accounts to fund his property investments, Sarah explained. He replaces the money before closing dates, so the clients never know. But it is a serious breach of fiduciary duty and potentially criminal fraud. This discovery was crucial because it meant Marcus's crimes extended beyond family disputes into professional misconduct that could cost him his real estate license and potentially result in criminal charges from multiple victims. Armed with this new evidence, Margaret and I developed a multi-pronged strategy that would attack my siblings from directions they had not anticipated. Instead of relying on witnesses they could intimidate, we would let their own crimes create consequences they could not escape. Our first move was to contact the State Real Estate Licensing Board with evidence of Marcus's misuse of client escrow accounts. This was not a family dispute. It was professional misconduct that threatened public welfare. Simultaneously, we reached out to Isabella's husband Thomas through his law firm. Margaret crafted a carefully worded letter that informed him about irregularities in his family's financial records that might affect his own professional standing if left unaddressed. The response to both contacts was immediate and devastating for my siblings. The Real Estate Licensing Board launched a formal investigation into Marcus's business practices, freezing his license pending review. This meant he could not complete any pending property transactions, effectively destroying his cash flow overnight. Thomas's reaction to learning about his wife's theft was even more dramatic. Within 24 hours of receiving our letter, he contacted Margaret directly to schedule a meeting. When we met at his law office the following day, his anger was barely contained. "My wife has been lying to me for years about our finances," Thomas said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "She told me she inherited $200,000 from a great-aunt I never met. Now I find out she stole that money from her own sister while making Maya feel worthless for being poor." Thomas's support transformed our case overnight. As a respected attorney with an impeccable reputation, his testimony about Isabella's lies and theft would carry enormous weight with any jury. More importantly, he had access to financial records that Isabella had hidden from everyone else. "I want to help you recover every penny they stole," Thomas told me. "What my wife did is not just theft. It is a betrayal of everything I thought I knew about her character." But our most powerful new ally emerged from an entirely unexpected direction. Dr. Kumar from the support group called me with exciting news about another group member. "Maya, do you remember Elena Rodriguez from our Thursday meetings? She mentioned that she had successfully prosecuted her father for financial elder abuse last year." I remembered Elena, a quiet woman in her 30s who rarely spoke during group sessions but always listened intently to other people's stories. "Elena is actually an investigative journalist who specializes in family financial crimes," Dr. Kumar continued. "She wants to meet with you about potentially covering your story for a major newspaper expose on family embezzlement." Elena and I met that weekend at the same diner where I had first talked with David Morrison. She was nothing like I had expected: confident, articulate, and intensely focused on detail. "Maya, your case represents something much larger than individual family dysfunction," Elena explained. "I have been investigating patterns of family financial abuse for 2 years, and your story has all the elements of systematic exploitation that affects thousands of families nationwide." Elena's proposal was ambitious and slightly terrifying. She wanted to write a comprehensive expose about family financial abuse, using my case as the central narrative while protecting my privacy through changed names and locations. "The article would serve two purposes," Elena said. "It would put additional pressure on your siblings by exposing their tactics to public scrutiny, and it would help other victims recognize similar patterns of abuse in their own families." The idea of making my private family trauma into a public story was intimidating, but Elena's argument was compelling. "Maya, your siblings have been controlling your narrative your entire life. They convinced you that you were worthless, that you should be grateful for scraps, that questioning them was a betrayal of family loyalty. Taking control of your own story is the ultimate act of liberation." With Elena's journalistic skills supporting our legal strategy, and Thomas's insider knowledge of Isabella's financial crimes, and Sarah's comprehensive investigation of Marcus's business fraud, we suddenly had more evidence and support than my siblings could possibly counter. But the most satisfying moment came when Sarah uncovered the final piece of evidence that would seal their fate. Hidden in Marcus's business computer files, she found a detailed spreadsheet tracking every dollar stolen from my trust fund, complete with dates, amounts, and notes about how to hide the transfers from detection. "Maya," Sarah said, her voice filled with professional admiration, "your brother kept a theft ledger. He documented his own crimes in obsessive detail, probably because he never thought anyone would be smart enough to find it. The spreadsheet was a prosecutor's dream, irrefutable proof of premeditated, systematic theft that no amount of manipulation or intimidation could explain away. Combined with our other evidence, It created a case so strong that even the district attorney who had previously declined criminal prosecution had to reconsider. As I sat in my apartment that evening, surrounded by evidence of my siblings' crimes and supported by allies who believed in justice, I felt something I had never experienced before: the certainty of coming victory. My siblings had underestimated me for the last time. They had taught me to fight dirty by example, but they had forgotten that the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. The final battle was about to begin, and this time I held all the cards. The collapse of my siblings' criminal empire began on a Tuesday morning with a knock on Marcus's door from two FBI agents investigating securities fraud. Sarah had forwarded our evidence to federal authorities, who discovered that Marcus's client escrow violations were part of a larger pattern of financial crimes involving multiple real estate transactions across state lines. I was not there to witness his arrest, but Thomas called me with a detailed account. "Maya, you should have seen his face when they put him in handcuffs. For the first time in his life, Marcus Rodriguez looked small and powerless." Isabella's downfall was more personal, but equally devastating. Thomas had filed for emergency divorce proceedings, freezing all their joint assets and demanding full financial disclosure. When Isabella tried to claim she was innocent of any wrongdoing, Thomas presented her with copies of every email, every bank transfer, every piece of evidence that proved her systematic theft. "She actually had the audacity to ask me to forgive her and work things out privately," Thomas told me during one of our strategy meetings. "She said family should stick together through difficult times. I told her that if family loyalty was so important to her, she should not have spent 8 years stealing from her sister." The civil lawsuit moved forward with unprecedented momentum. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the defection of Isabella's husband, my siblings' attorney advised them to settle rather than risk criminal prosecution and additional civil penalties. Margaret negotiated aggressively from our position of strength. The final settlement required Marcus and Isabella to return the full $400,000 they had stolen, plus interest and punitive damages totaling an additional $200,000. They also had to publicly acknowledge their theft and formally apologize for their emotional and financial abuse. But the most satisfying consequence was watching their carefully constructed lives crumble under the weight of their exposed crimes. Marcus lost his real estate license permanently and faced federal charges for securities fraud that would likely result in prison time. His property empire, built on stolen money and fraudulent practices, was liquidated to pay victims and legal fees. Isabella's divorce was finalized within 3 months, leaving her with minimal assets and a reputation so damaged that she struggled to find employment. The luxury lifestyle she had built on my stolen inheritance disappeared overnight, replaced by the same financial insecurity she had spent years inflicting on me. My mother's reaction to the exposure of her children's crimes was perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of the entire situation. When confronted with irrefutable evidence of Marcus and Isabella's systematic theft and emotional abuse, she chose to maintain her denial rather than acknowledge the truth. "Maya, you are destroying this family over money," she said during our final conversation. "Your father would be ashamed of what you have become." "Dad left me a letter saying I was the strongest and most honest of his children," I replied calmly. "He also said that Marcus and Isabella were nothing without me, not the other way around." He was right. That was the last time we spoke. My mother chose to enable my siblings' crimes rather than support justice, and I chose to prioritize truth over family loyalty. Some relationships cannot survive the exposure of fundamental moral differences. Elena's newspaper article was published 6 months after my legal victory, generating national attention and inspiring dozens of other family financial abuse victims to come forward with their own stories. The article led to legislative hearings about strengthening protections for family financial abuse victims and created a national conversation about the prevalence of such crimes. "Maya," Elena said during the article's publication celebration, "your courage to fight back has given voice to thousands of people who thought they were alone with this kind of abuse. You did not just win your own case, you helped change how society recognizes and responds to family financial crimes. But the most meaningful transformation was personal. The support group that had been my refuge during the darkest moments of this battle became my chosen family. Rebecca, Dr. Kumar, James Maria, and the other members had seen me at my most vulnerable and supported me through my most difficult decisions. You know what amazes me about your story, Rebecca said during one of our weekly meetings. You did not just recover your stolen money, you recovered your stolen identity. You discovered who you really are when you are not being told you are worthless. She was right. The woman who had started this journey believing she was nothing without her family's approval had become someone who understood her own worth, independent of anyone else's opinion. I had learned to recognize manipulation, demand respect, and fight for justice, even when the battle seemed impossible. 6 months after the settlement, I used part of my recovered inheritance to start a nonprofit organization that provides legal support and resources for family financial abuse victims. Working with Margaret Walsh and Michael Torres, we created a network that helps people recognize financial exploitation and provides assistance in pursuing both civil and criminal remedies. The organization's first major case involved helping an elderly man whose son had stolen his retirement savings, using the same systematic approach that had proven successful in my own situation. Watching him recover his dignity along with his money reminded me why this fight had been worth all the pain and isolation. David Morrison eventually came back into my life, deeply ashamed of his temporary betrayal and grateful for my forgiveness. Maya, he said when we reconnected, your father would be prouder of who you have become than of anything Marcus or Isabella ever accomplished. You have more integrity and strength than both of them combined. Thomas and I developed an unexpected friendship based on our shared experience of family betrayal and recovery. He provided legal consultation for my nonprofit organization and became one of my most trusted advisors. You know what I learned from this whole experience, Thomas said during one of our planning meetings. The people who deserve your loyalty are the ones who would never demand it. Your siblings demanded loyalty while betraying you. The people who really love you earn your trust through their actions. Today, 3 years after discovering my father's hidden documents, I live in a house I own outright, work in a career I am passionate about, and surround myself with people who value honesty and integrity. The anxiety and self-doubt that dominated my life for 26 years have been replaced by confidence and purpose. Marcus is serving a 2-year federal prison sentence for securities fraud and will be on probation for 5 additional years. He lost everything he built on stolen money and now works in a warehouse for minimum wage when he is released. Isabella works as a cashier at a grocery store and lives in a small apartment similar to the one I occupied during my years of financial struggle. The irony is not lost on me that she now experiences the same economic insecurity she inflicted on me while living in luxury funded by my inheritance. Sometimes people ask me if I regret destroying my family relationships for money. My answer is always the same. I did not destroy anything. I simply stopped pretending that theft was love and abuse was protection. My siblings destroyed our family the day they decided I was worth less than their greed. The most important lesson I learned is that chosen family often provides more genuine love and support than blood relatives who confuse loyalty with enabling. Dr. Kumar, Rebecca, Elena Thomas, and the other people who stood by me during this battle created the family connection I had always craved but never experienced. My father's final letter to me said that I was not nothing without them. They were nothing without me. But the real truth is even more empowering. I am everything I need to be all by myself, and the people who truly belong in my life are those who enhance my strength rather than exploit my vulnerabilities. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that family members were manipulating or taking advantage of you financially or emotionally? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and standing up for yourself? Your stories matter, and sharing them helps other people recognize that they are not alone in these difficult situations. Drop your experiences in the comments below and let others know they are not crazy for questioning family dynamics that do not feel right. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family manipulation and finding your own strength. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than being made to feel worthless by the people who should love them most. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting others who are fighting for justice in their own families. Remember that you are never nothing without the people who make you feel that way. You are everything you need to be when you finally discover your own worth.